Meeting of the planning board is called to order. And so,
Okay.
Paul, can you do your thing, Paul?
In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law relating to the 2020 novel coronavirus outbreak emergency, December 15th, 2020, public meeting for the Falmouth Planning Board shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. Alternative public access to this meeting shall be provided in the following manner. 1, the meeting will be televised via Falmouth Community Television. 2, real-time public comment can be addressed to the planning board utilizing the Zoom virtual meeting software for remote access. This application would allow users to view the meeting and send a comment or question to the chair via the chat function. Submitted text comments will be read into the record at the appropriate points in the meeting. Zoom login instructions. Instructions and the meeting link for this specific meeting can be found the following web address: www.falmouthmass.us/1112/planning board. Please plan on 10 to 15 minutes of preparation time to log in, though it may be less if you have previously used Zoom on the device you will use to access this meeting. 3, additionally, public comments may be sent in advance of the meeting to falmouth@falmouthma.gov at least 5 hours prior to the beginning of the meeting. Documents and audio or video files may also be submitted via email. Submitted email comments and documents will be made a part of the meeting record and may be read into the record, summarized, or displayed during the meeting at the discretion of the chair. 4, applicants, their representatives, and individuals with enforcement matters before the planning board may appear remotely and are not required to be physically present. Applicants, their representatives, and individuals with enforcement matters before the planning board may contact the planning department to arrange an alternative means of real-time participation if unable to use the Zoom virtual meeting software. Documentary exhibits and/or visual presentations should be submitted in advance of the meeting to the planning@falmouthma.gov so that they may be displayed for remote public access viewing.
Thank you, Paul. And now you're on again, Paul, for the minutes of December 1st and December 8th.
I received the draft minutes late this afternoon, and if anyone had comments on them, I can defer the minutes. If not, I recommend approval of the minutes of December 1st and December 8th as correct.
I did
Second.
not have a chance to look at them. Does anybody else have any feeling about that, or do you want to move ahead?
Move ahead.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Okay, 6 of us are present and 6 voted affirmatively. Planning board discussion, potential topics for joint meeting with select board. And as you know, we're going to suggest what we think we'd like to see and then work it down to the best, say 2 out of 3. They will have their own choices too, so that I think we can't handle more than 2 topics. So we'll see what we come up with. Who would like to go first with suggestions? And we'll discuss it here and, as I said, winnow it down. Paul?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a basic question. Since we meet so infrequently with the select board, should we be referring to maybe philosophical approaches to things we're doing rather than specific activities such as Davis Straits, for example? Question.
Okay, anybody want to discuss Paul's question? Jim? Jim, you're muted.
I think, Paul, I'd like you to expound on that a little bit. Why wouldn't you want specifically to talk about Davis Straits instead of a more philosophical view?
Well, I'm not referring specifically to Davis Straits. I use that as an example. For example, how about the long-term goals of the planning board and local strategic plan? What input does the select board want in our approach to the local comprehensive plan? Should we have input into the selectmen's or select board's strategic plan? Should we be talking at that level rather than a specific project? I wasn't trying to downplay Davis Straits at all. It was a philosophical question.
And I don't know whether you all saw that, but Doug Brown said, how about complete streets? Jim?
I understand Paul's concern. However, we've been down this road a lot, and I think my recommendation is we pick the 2 most important things and pound them and just try to get them forward. We've talked about all these things with them for many years.
Charlotte?
I also understand Paul's concern, and I think it might be sometime a useful conversation, but really our major vision ideas, general ideas are in the local comprehensive plan. We have things that we haven't accomplished there. I would really like to see us be more in the weeds about what is going to be coming up in the coming year that we might want to see going forward to town meetings sometime in the next year or year and a half, so that we've put them on notice and asked for whatever input they're going to have, and they know what we're doing concretely. My concern is that general ideas are necessary, but they often remain up there at the macro level, and most of our work is down in the weeds work, and I would rather be talking to the selectmen about actual on our board projects now that they could help us move forward.
Bob?
Yeah, my concern is I would like to concentrate on the transportation committee and the work that they've been doing, because I'm fearful that some decisions are going to be made about what to do with downtown and with traffic and parking and all that. And we're not going to get a chance to weigh in and say anything about it because, I hear different things and I don't like a lot of what I'm hearing. We keep talking about the local comprehensive plan, and in the plan, we talked about satellite parking and shuttling people downtown and to the beaches. And that doesn't seem to be part of any real topic. They talk about parking garages and one-way streets and angled parking and one side of the street parking. Let's get people not to drive downtown. I mean, it's fine the way it is. It works. It shows that it's a vibrant place. The amount of traffic that's on Main Street is a traffic calming device. If we want to bring more people down that are coming from the other parts of Falmouth, whether it's from East Falmouth or Wacoit or North Falmouth, they can go to one of the parking lots at the schools and let's shuttle them. And I keep saying it. You look at the Falmouth High School parking lot, we must have 17 little buses up there that sit idle during the summer. Why aren't we using them? Why aren't we hiring people to drive them? It's a no-brainer. Other towns do this. It isn't something that we have to invent. It's already been invented. We just need to implement it.
Okay, I want to weigh in on this because when I was piling through stuff today to try to find something on the design review, I came across our joint meeting of October 21st of 2019. And we talked about all of this on transportation. As far as I could see, it went nowhere except a transportation committee was established. But we talked about complete streets. We talked about parking and satellite and off and shuttling in. So we talked about all of this, but there hasn't been movement to push any of these ideas forward except what might be happening with the two committees. I think if we're going to bring up transportation as a joint topic, I think we ought to have, instead of just generically talking about it, I mean, Paul has said philosophically talking about it, I think it would be really nice to be able to have some endpoints that we all agree on done. We agree on it and we work towards getting it done. Charlotte.
Rather than advocating now for the things I'd like to see on it, I think we're just building the list of what we want to consider. So what I'd like to do is get on that list of what we might consider to talk about with the selectmen is design guidelines, multifamily overlay district, and Davis Straits.
Okay.
They're kind of related to one another. They're definitely related to one another.
Yes, they are.
Well, the other thing on transportation, wouldn't we have to include the transportation committee?
Yeah.
If we were going to do that?
I would think so.
Just a thought.
I know. So these are things that when we sort through this and discuss it to decide upon what we want to do, that's something that needs to be brought up, Charlotte. Okay.
But we have a representative from the transportation committee.
Mm-hmm.
We do.
So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Paul.
I've had some concerns that I've expressed that the planning board is worried about during our meetings, and I've addressed that. Right now, we're dealing with a white paper for downtown parking with a whole myriad of things. I think it's too complicated, but that's what the committee is doing. And the intent is to come up with some recommendations next month so they can start implementing these things in next fall and worry about a more comprehensive white paper later on this spring. So I've been pushing for that. And I know, Bob, particularly you're interested in that, but it is a committee. And I spoke with the chairman as late as this afternoon, talking about my concerns about moving forward with the transportation activities. On a side note, that meeting of October 21st of last year, the strategic plan of the select board does not include transportation at all, which was to me a little surprising. That's why I mentioned about having input into their strategic plan. But I think there's considerable interest, obviously. But if you've charged a committee with looking at some of these issues, downtown parking, I don't think you can bypass that committee and start having separate meetings with people who are not been studying it. That was my concern at the last meeting. It's still my concern, and I carried it back to that committee.
So it may not be a viable topic, is what you're saying, to be brought up in our joint meeting.
Well, I'd like to share what we come up with this board as soon as I can. We had it, went over it line by line, and some changes are being made to it. So I'd like to share that with our committee here, get your input as well. But I think if you've set up a committee to look at downtown parking and you don't include them in the discussion between the select board and the planning board, you're missing something.
Okay, John?
Yeah, Paul, is your committee considering busing?
I mean, busing.
Like Bob was suggesting, busing people downtown from parking lots.
Oh, shuttling, yes. Yes, that's one of the elements.
Are there any concerns about the COVID situation?
It has not been expressed, in a specific case, obviously everyone's concerned with it, but specifically it has not been addressed on busing.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I can think of a very large topic that really does need to be addressed between the two boards, because that's the coastal resiliency. We're going to have to be making some really tough decisions. And I think we should be talking about, I know they don't have it finished yet, but we've had reports on Surf Drive. There's been a report on a study down in Woods Hole as well. And I think maybe we need to be edging towards making those decisions that will translate either into policies of the town or into zoning bylaws. And we need to be on the same page, both the select board and the planning board.
I can add one more thing about transportation.
Yes, Paul.
At the last meeting we had, the chairman had invited Doug Brown to join as a member of the select board. And he provided a narrative that he was going to read. And he read his narrative, and it was very diplomatic, in my opinion, but very hard hitting against the select board on their ability to follow through on a number of different things. We've had study after study and nothing's come of it. So that was pointed out very, very effectively in a very nice manner to the representative from the select board at the meeting last week. You may want to take a look at it on the Zoom video. It was very powerful, but very professional and very diplomatic.
Charlotte?
I wonder if it's continuing to be important to the board to not include other committees in this, that we're going to meet only with the selectmen. And if that's true, don't we have to steer clear of those topics that would really require us to bring in the main committee considering the topic? Because it's true that we're involved, but we are not the named committee. For example, both transportation and coastal resiliency have committees working on that. Neither one has finished its work.
Bob?
At some point, should we draft a letter to the various committees like the Coastal Resiliency and the Transportation Committee stating our position on some of the issues?
We could, but the reason I think that we could also meet on transportation and coastal resiliency without bringing in other boards is that decisions will be made without the input of the select board that has an awful lot of the decision authority on how we're going to progress, or without the input of the planning board because we do zoning bylaws. So I think it's probably a little bit better in the long run to start this discussion and then to bring in the individual boards, I think, or the individual committees that are working on this. I don't think we're stepping on toes to start putting our toes in the water on these things.
I think writing a letter might save us. We're not ready to write a letter. We haven't had discussions as a whole board on either topic. So we don't really know what the board thinks. We know what some individuals on the board have been working on and what they think. And do we want to give up our planning time to find out what the board thinks and then write a letter? That kind of makes a commitment that takes us away from the issues that we're working on and are hoping to advance. And we've been working on for some time. And I would really like to see us kind of mind our business, our own business long enough to get forward on them.
Jim?
I 100% agree with Charlotte. I think we should pick our two most important things and drive them home.
Okay. So what I've got so far, unless I'm missing, is transportation, design guidelines, multifamily overlay, Davis Straits, and coastal resiliency. Okay. Are there other suggestions? Paul, did you want? Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to go back, but I did want to make a comment on what was said. But more importantly, transfer of development rights is an issue we should at least throw in the pot.
Okay. Bob?
Well, since the design review is more or less a new thing that hasn't received a lot of attention, maybe we should concentrate on those. Let transportation and coastal resiliency, leave that for another time till we get the white paper, like Paul says, and maybe we end up having a meeting with each committee independently, and just concentrate on the new stuff that we're talking about that has an effect. The design review affects the Davis Straits overlay. It affects the multi-housing overlay, so that they kind of tie in together. So maybe we should just concentrate on that. Like Jim says, let's pick two maybe at the most that we can really hammer home.
Charlotte?
We've got a little batch. Two at the most sounds pretty good, but we've got actually 4 very interconnected things. They're all
Right.
married to one another and hard to
Mhm.
separate out. Going way back, but still up in the air, is we wanted to have revised our site plan review bylaw so that we address more of the issues that need to be addressed, and some of them are design issues. We did want to do the design, which we began quite a while ago, but didn't actually move it along far enough. So if we're going to do it, it'd be good to keep the things that are linked together part of the conversation, because they're interdependent on one another. And on Davis Straits, I mean, it all comes to rest right there.
Bob?
But how much does design review have to, or site plan review have to do with the selectmen?
That's a good question. The site plan review and the interconnected things about design guidelines and Davis Straits is going to require support to get through town meeting. And the best support that we can have, because it would go to the select board to get their imprimatur on that, they would be our best supporters if they wish to support what we're proposing. But it's going to be difficult for them to do that if they really don't know much about it or enough about it to really feel enthusiastic. It would be nice to have some enthusiasm. We need support in order to get these done.
You know, we're just starting moving forward with Union Studios on Davis Straits. And we've been working on this for a number of years. It might be a really good idea to put Davis Straits up front on this, because as you pointed out, it has to do with the multifamily overlay. It has to do with design guidelines. It has to do with complete streets under transportation in the vision of it. So I think that may be something that we need to look at, is putting Davis Straits on there, because we're looking to move ahead with Union Studios and plan that whole area out. We definitely need the support of the selectmen. We definitely need to be able to inform them about this questionnaire that's going to be going live and get their input on it before it goes live. So I'm going to propose that maybe we need to put a big star by Davis Straits and pull these other elements into it as needed.
The other elements, actually, they're all the same thing.
Mhm.
They're just aspects of exactly the same thing.
Mhm.
Because the design guidelines, in effect, is form-based code light. You know, it's a guideline. This isn't mandatory, but it certainly is the funnel down which you run in order to get form-based zoning.
Mhm.
So that they're so connected to one another. And in order to get the kind of teeth into the design guidelines, we would want our site plan review bylaw to plug some of its holes. Remember the last time we were talking about it, we were agitated because they were putting up the new Cumberland Farms and gas station up there at the corner of Jones Road and Palmer Ave.
Mhm.
Wow, they should have had to come to ask us, blah, blah. Well, they don't have to now. So we have little things about the site plan review to fix and somewhat bigger things, and we've taken in a lot of advice. I've got among the documents here Michaela did a lot of research for us on bylaws that other towns have that point out to us things that we should think about and maybe want to borrow. We're actually close. We just didn't quite finish. So if we bunch them together, we're more likely to get them and see that they're interconnected and move them all forward. And Davis Straits would be the main thing, not the
It's the
first thing,
linchpin. It's the
concluding thing.
linchpin. Mhm.
Well, it's where we would see the most of this coming to fruition the soonest.
And that's why I'm kind of, I think, suggesting that maybe we want to put this front and center for a topic. Because when we discuss it with the select board, they will see how it's all coming together and how all these things are interrelated, I believe.
Well, we can actually connect the dots for them and how
Well,
we present our
yeah.
topics.
When I say
Right.
they can see, right, we'll have to do
Yeah,
that,
they're
obviously.
smart people. I know they would, but it might move it along faster if we
It
do
would.
that.
Bob?
I think that's the way we should approach this because we still don't know what they want to discuss.
Correct.
So,
We know Doug Brown is listening right now.
I know.
and
But
you
he's
know,
one
you wanted to
person who
talk about
can't
complete
speak for
streets.
bringing.
We will be talking about complete streets as
Mhm.
part of Davis Straits. So
Right.
we can touch on that, but I
Well,
don't want to.
interesting- Yeah,
I don't want to load up with planning board stuff only to have to take them off the table because of they may not jive with what the select board wants to talk
Mhm.
about.
And Tom, but you're muted. Take yourself off mute, Tom.
Yes, ma'am. I was practicing good Zooming by finding the mute button and then hitting it when I was queued up. So, regarding complete streets, we are actually have a meeting with the Board of Selectmen on the 21st to sort of ink the deal we're doing with the Cape Cod Commission on developing that. And we are looking at actually having our first public meeting on complete streets. I want to say it's January 13th. So by the time we get to meet with the selectmen, we will have kicked off complete streets, both from the selectmen's perspective and had our first public input session on January 13th. So I don't know how cogent complete streets is as a topic for this joint meeting, because we'll sort of be, well underway with that. Just my suggestion to sort of narrow the scope of the subject we've been talking about.
Well, Doug just flashed a comment on here saying it's all about the planning board and what our objectives are. But I disagree. I think when we bring a topic up, we are also soliciting how the select board is thinking about these issues. Charlotte?
two things. I agree with you, Pat. I think what we're looking to do is to be walking on the same path with the select board, not to tell them about the separate things that we're doing, but how we can be involved with one another. Early on, last meeting, when this was discussed about what topics do we want, communication was one of them. And this is actually more than talking about communication. This is communicating. And it would be great to use our time to advance our projects. The other thing I wanted to say, Doug Brown, when he gave a comment in the chat earlier, was agreeing with Pat that coastal resiliency is very important and on everybody's mind. And it is part of the design of Davis Straits, because the Cape Cod Commission and the people who were feeding information to them in order to get the report made it part of it. So in a way, it would be part, here it would be, demonstrated that thought is being given to that.
So what we're looking at with Davis Straits is an umbrella topic, and then we should put subsets under it, things that do apply to the whole Davis Straits view concept that we're working on. Is that what you're suggesting, Charlotte?
That these efforts are all intertwined and support one another
Okay.
and need
And
to
now-
advance. We need to get to town meeting on them.
Yes. Now you had brought up communication, Charlotte, too, as another topic
I
potentially.
was harking back to it because we mentioned it at our last meeting. And at the point when, there was some thought that we were going to be doing this tonight. And communication strikes me as one of those macro topics that Paul was mentioning, that everybody agrees you need more of it. Everybody's got 1 to 3 ideas on it and almost nothing happens next. So I think it's, I like more concrete things.
Mhm.
We are communicating. We'll be communicating with them all during this meeting. And it's nice to be able to ask for action. This is what we'd like from them, is support on these things.
Okay, now I'm assuming that the select board will come up with at least one topic themselves. As I said, I envision that we can't handle well any more than two topics. I don't know whether you disagree with me or not, or agree on that.
Did you see what Doug Brown wrote? It's
I
all
didn't.
about the planning board and what your objectives are.
That I did see. But
He's one member, but
I know.
can take it as indicative.
I think since we have one topic that has a bunch of subsets, I think that would cover it.
We're good to go on that one topic, even if that is the sole topic for that joint meeting.
Yes, because it covers coastal resiliency, transportation, all those things, design review.
Mhm.
So I think all those can get wedged into there.
Oh, Doug says he disagrees. There's no reason we can't handle four topics.
Well, that's what I'm saying is with that one umbrella topic,
Yeah.
we will be covering more than two.
Well,
Covering design review, we'll be covering form-based code, we'll be covering transportation, coastal resiliency,
multifamily,
multifamily. So there's a lot of things that are part of that.
Each segment having its own discussion under
Right.
that
Right.
umbrella.
Rather than breaking them out as separate, it just comes under that one umbrella.
And as Doug says, it all depends on the time frame.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Is it going to be an hour and a half meeting? Is it going to be a 2-hour meeting? That's part of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to throw communication in as a separate, more generic topic or not?
people love generics. You give them one and they'll spend the whole time on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be the last topic, Charlotte.
Yeah.
Okay. Paul?
Yeah, one thing that has been mentioned, but we may want to consider it very briefly, is we're coming to the end of the first phase of the recodification. We need to do the implementation now, and that requires funding approved by the Board of Select Board. So it would be nice to bring that up and kind of summarize it. This is where we're going. Now we need funding for the real business of improving the town code.
Isn't that an administrative matter? The town has supported this for these many years, and I'm sure Tom has figured out how to ask for the money to see it through.
Tom?
Yes. We've had a discussion at the board about submitting a warrant article for funding for phase 2 of the bylaw, projected to be somewhere around 90 grand, but we've only had sort of a broad, conversation about it. The board hasn't taken any action. It was my thought that when we meet on January 5th for our next hearing for the recodification, that the board might decide to take a formal vote and vote to say we'd like this on the warrant, because it has a lot more standing with you than it does with me as a department head. I've already launched the flare with Frank Duffy and with Jennifer Mullen to let them know that this is one thing that we've been talking about. So I think it's important, one, to touch base on recodification, and then it's coming to town meeting. And in addition to that, we'd like to be asking for additional funds. But once again, with the warrant closing on January 15th, that will likely be prior to the joint meeting with the Board of Select.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think recodification is certainly something we should have a discussion about with the selectmen, as well as potentially the funding for round 2.
You're saying it should be, even though the warrant would have been established before we have this joint meeting, Tom?
If the board takes a vote on our January 1st of January meeting, January 5th meeting, that says, here are the articles we're sending to for town meeting. recodification and funding for phase 2, then it'd already be submitted for the warrant. And we'd just be along that process, and we'd still be in our hearings for recodification, as we talked about keeping those open for the spring.
Charlotte?
What is the date that we're meeting with the selectmen? What date are we talking about for this agenda?
We don't know yet.
Yeah, we're talking
Didn't you say the beginning of February?
third-ish week of January.
It would be after town meeting. And when I spoke with Julian, most likely it'd be one of the first 2 weeks in February. Okay, so we've spent quite a bit of time on this. Show of hands for putting Davis Straits in as the umbrella article, please. Okay, 6 out of 6. So that goes in as an umbrella topic, with a lot of these other things as subtopics under it that we can touch on in this discussion on Davis Straits.
Yeah.
Makes sense to all of you?
Mhm.
Tom?
So those ribs of our umbrella being design guidelines, multifamily, transportation, and coastal resilience.
And this
No,
Site plan.
site plan.
Site
review.
plan.
Yeah,
site plan bylaw,
Okay.
design guidelines, multifamily,
transportation also, because that's a lot of what we're talking about with Davis Straits, the
I
complete
was just trying to
streets.
add to Tom's list.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
Sorry.
so mine is, once again, those ribs: transportation, design guidelines, multifamily, coastal resilience, and site plan.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And I think that is substance enough for a very substantive meeting. Does anybody want to add another potential topic to that as a main topic? Okay, we're good to go on that then. Thank you all.
So
Tom?
just to clarify, so we're not gonna launch the flare or anything on recodification? That's not gonna be part of the discussion?
No, I don't think so. And Doug says, can we include a quick educational narrative on, I'm sorry, it disappeared.
Yeah, could you include a quick educational narrative on transfer of development rights?
Yeah, but it's just a sentence or two, I think, really. Isn't it, Tom?
Well, I can, do a very basic primer, but, typically where we see transfer of development rights is there are lots of places people want to send rights from, but very few places to receive those rights.
Right.
And those rights typically wind up in a place like something like Davis Straits, where you say, this is where we want to target development at. And so we will give people density bonuses beyond what they would typically get for transferring those development rights in. So
we could even make that another rib on the umbrella.
yeah, it's typically the receiving area for transfer of development rights. And I know that Bob has been very passionate about wanting to improve our TDR. It's in our phase 2 as needing essentially an entire rework. But it's one of those components for that you could clearly incorporate into Davis Straits. Is you've got X number of units that you can build in an area, but people could build more units by transferring that development right from someplace you don't want development, coastal area, velocity zones, things like that, to this area.
Okay, so we've got another rib on the umbrella that takes care of Doug's desire there too. And essentially we accumulated and put everything as ribs to the umbrella that we threw against the wall here. We're all good with that? Okay. So moving on, form-based code, discuss the website and the survey. And does anybody have any comments on that? I'm assuming you all read what Tom sent, that the group has put together to be able to put out a survey. Jim?
What's the target date for bringing it live?
The target date is right after the first of the year. We'd like to get your concurrence on what's on the website and the survey, because we don't think people are going to be looking for a new website to look at prior to the Christmas. So right after the first of the year would be the time we'd want to launch this.
Okay, my main question here is it said, see this, see this, see this, if you want to dig deeper. Do they plan to make that clickable so it will take you right to what they're talking about, see this?
Yeah, if you like, I'll be happy to just do a quick share screen with the website on it if you like.
I don't know, has everybody looked at it?
Looked at it.
Yeah. So
Yep.
that was my only question that I had, because if people want to dive deeper into these concepts here, they're not going to want to have to go searching for the Form-Based Code Institute and then find out, well, this segment is what we were talking about under several layers. So it would be very handy if Union Studios and Horsley Witten would make, if you want to dive deeper and look at this, this, and this, make it clickable.
Yeah, there are live links throughout all the pages interrelating to the different tabs on the website to links off the website. There'll be a link from the Town of Falmouth's Planning Board website to this website as well. So we'll be,
Okay.
a hyperlink fest.
Okay. And Doug wants to be copied on drafts such as these. He has a lot to learn about form-based code. And this is the kind of thing where Tom has served us so extraordinarily well. He and Michaela both have done a tremendous amount of research, and we get all this information into our packets. When we have this joint meeting, I think it will be extremely informative for the select board to get a nice dense packet that they can look through and educate themselves before our joint meeting.
Well, that would be true for each of the topics, the main topic and the spokes, so that they have that opportunity. They're very busy people. They might not get to it, but if they want to, it would be there. Could I
Right.
make a comment on the website and the survey?
Of course.
I really like it. I think
Yep.
it's great. They've done a good job. They've taken a big subject, they've broken it down into comprehensible, clear chunks, and given us additional information. If you want to, you can come back to it. It's not a one-shot deal. And I think the survey is very concrete, so that we would have real direction from the answers that people give to it.
I agree. When I looked at it, I thought, oh, this is really good.
Yep.
Anybody else have any comments on this? Okay, and Tom, would you copy Doug Brown on that so that he can learn?
If I was a better typist, I already would have sent him the email with the link to the website in it, but I'm a bad typist. I'm actually sending it now to Doug.
Okay, so Doug will have it then.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And there may be other members of the select board who would like to see that as well. Okay, moving on. Design review guidelines status. And Charlotte and I talked earlier today about that. Charlotte.
Okay, there's a couple of things about that. This is a memory question. Do you remember when we as a board approved the Cape Cod Commission's document on this and said, this is what we're going to do, but we're going to revise it so it's a better reflection of Falmouth, so that the pictures, there are a number of Falmouth pictures in it anyway, but more of the pictures are from Falmouth, and we cut out a lot of the extra verbiage so that it's easier to get to. Do you remember making that decision?
Bob says yes.
I think Jim's kind of, yeah.
Oh, Jim, yes, he remembers that too.
John, yeah, okay, good. And Pat and I certainly do, because we talked about it today and went fishing through our papers and found more stuff on it. The use of this guideline, when Pat and I met just before the pandemic put an end to all in-person meetings, we went through, we found an example that we really liked. I'm going to hold it up. You can get it on the website for Orleans. Orleans has their design guidelines that they sort of plagiarized from the Cape Cod Commission's guidelines. And we thought, well, gee, they did a pretty good job. Why don't we build off of what they did? Because it took an awful lot of text and it broke it down into chunks. And it's going to be hard to see, so I'm going to stop doing this. But they broke it down into very good chunks. And we used that as our starting point and went through the narrative and took out a bunch of words and put in Falmouth where they said Orleans, and really didn't come up with much that's unique to what we're doing, just making it easier to follow. And like Orleans, it's in sections that make it easy for the main users for this wouldn't be really homeowners. It's going to be commercial developers, people who own property and want to develop it commercially, commercial developers who want to find a piece of land and work with the owner. They're going to be our audience for this, and the architects that they employ and the engineers. This is what they would be looking at. And what we'll be saying by putting out design guidelines, not that if you do it the way we say, you're guaranteed that we're going to give you a positive site plan review, but if you try to follow the guidelines, you're going to have a much better chance of going through the process to permitting faster.
Jim?
Almost done, Jim.
Oh.
Go ahead, Charlotte, you're not done?
One more sentence. This afternoon, Melinda emailed to you the draft that Pat and I worked on of what our narrative would be. And I know you haven't had time to absorb it all, but you have it, and you can be thinking about it for when we do get back together and can give a longer review to it. There, go ahead.
Jim?
Well, I'm going from my memory, but I thought we already did this. I thought we actually looked at a set of guidelines, looked at it and voted on it and said, this is what we're going to do.
Yep.
I thought that happened a year and a half ago. And what we're
That's-
doing, I thought it's a voted and done. And now we're talking about revising it. But either way, I just thought we already did this.
Jim,
Well,
we
did and we
did.
didn't.
We did. We adopted the Cape Cod Commission design review guidelines wholesale. And we knew that they were not really totally applicable to Falmouth, but we wanted to deal with something else at town meeting that required that we had design guidelines in place. So at that time, we knew that we would be revising the Cape Cod Commission guidelines. We're not throwing them out because Orleans used them. We'll be using them. Okay, Jim?
Well, I thought, and I may be mistaken, that we had already voted on that when we do site plan review, we're doing design review at the same time, and we adopted a policy. And I think we should be just talking about modifying the policy that's already adopted, not starting fresh. I
Oh.
thought this was a done deal.
Thank you. That's what we are talking about.
Okay,
It's a
so let's use
modification.
terminology, revising existing guidelines that I believe, if you look at the minutes, we've already voted.
You're right.
And so I
Yeah.
don't want to start a nouveau thing and all this discussion. And I thought it was a done deal. In fact, I thought we were using it. I thought we were
It
already doing
is, Jim, it is a done deal. But we knew at the time that we were going to be substantially revising them to better meet Falmouth's needs than a large Cape Cod generic document. So that's what Charlotte and I were tasked to do, is to look at those. And then as she pointed out, the shutdown came. Because we met, I think, sometime early part of March, I believe.
Yep.
And as you know, shutdown happened. So we've been unable to meet further on this because it really does take person to person, hands-on almost manipulation of this, I think. At least Charlotte and I do better working in that manner. Tom? You're muted, Tom.
Just have my mouse in the wrong place. I have 3 screens over here. It makes it a little
Yeah, I know.
more complicated. So what I had emailed the board previously is that we are in the midst of setting up a CPTC, a Citizens Planning Training Collaborative session, specifically for Falmouth, likely in February. And I've invited Ken Buckman, who is the current Falmouth, or current Wareham town planner, former Falmouth town planner, worked for 13 years with the Cecil Group in the private sector designing these things. And he teaches his class on the use of design review. The description says design review is a process the municipalities can undertake to improve the visual quality of structures and promote good design for the benefit of the public. The session will clarify the appropriate scope and authority for the use of design guidelines, type of standards that can be implemented, and how it can be accomplished. This session will also explain how design review guidelines can be developed, administered, and enforced in a fair and predictable manner. Now, that's the Ken presentation that Ken is going to do, but we want to have it sort of Falmouth-centric for us. So Ken has agreed to do this for us. We've got money in our training. We'll do a Zoom sort of session some point in February. So I think that after we have get a sort of a primer and some insight from Ken, I think it's a great time at that point to launch right into what we might want to amend and modify in our design regulations. Because it's not a town meeting vote, it's a local regulation, just a
Right.
hearing of the board.
Okay. And that's all part of what we're trying to accomplish. Yes, Charlotte.
Note to that, our very own Brian gave the workshop. The date wasn't on his handout. I don't know, maybe 18 months ago, and I went to it, and I still have the handout, so it's probably exactly the same presentation. If you'd like this handout, I'll have copies made of it.
Okay, Jim?
I would just like us to use the words that Tom just did, talking about amending, not starting new, because I think we already have it in place. And I
It is
agree, we should
amending.
amend what we have and make it better, but it's already there and we are using it and we will use it going forward.
I don't think Charlotte and I are arguing with you. It is in place and we are amending it.
We completely agree with you and have adopted that language.
Okay. And Tom, did you want to say something?
No, just that I've known Brian and Ken both for a long time, and Ken has like worked directly with the Cecil Group. That's what they did. They designed things. They did work for us in Kingston.
Yeah.
This was his day job for 13 years. He's a good guy, does a great job. And he's, not that I'm putting any pressure on Ken if he's watching, but he's got sort of a vested interest to steer us in the right direction because he lives here.
Mhm.
The last thing he wants to see is design run amok, I would think.
Right.
I was just putting in a plug for Brian. It was a good session.
Paul?
Yeah, I serve with Ken on a community preservation committee. I thought very highly of him. My understanding is the town planner over in Wareham, and they have a big development project at the old nail factory there. It'd be interesting to see how he addresses that issue.
Okay. So I think we've got all the points that we wanted to discuss tonight. Charlotte?
I was hoping that we could discuss multifamily by overlay district at least a little.
Unfortunately, it's not on the agenda.
That is unfortunate. If
And
we're
I
going to bring it up with
think,
the planning, with the selectmen, we really need a chance as a planning board to have discussed it so that we know what we think.
well, remember, we do have a meeting next week too.
Okay,
Okay, and as I recall, I think John was just as happy to delay it a little bit because he was still working on it.
Mhm.
He's nodding
is.
yes. Okay,
Yep.
so John, do you think next week is going to be okay, or would you prefer delaying it even a little further? Further, okay. So there's the answer to that one. Tom?
Yeah, and on another channel, we've been having a conversation with town council about some of the issues we talked about before about, specific to rental. So council has been looking at that. They've reached out to the folks in Nantucket as well to ask them for the comments they received from the Attorney General when they passed their bylaw, to have some idea about how that flew and what any concerns the AG might have had. So I don't want to get the impression these things just fall in a hole. I mean, there are things that fall in a hole. This is not one of them. I confess I have some holes. But we've been moving this along with town council and trying to drill down on that a bit more in the end.
Okay. Okay, great.
There are other aspects to the multifamily overlay that are raised in the whole document. That's one of them. but there are many, many others that we could have a fruitful discussion on while we skirt the one that seems to be a little up in the air.
John?
That's what Charlotte is talking about, trying to have a consensus with the board on how they feel about the bylaw in general and in specific,
Then we could put that on for the 22nd.
just so we have a sense going forward of how everyone else feels about it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
okay. Are there any announcements? Jim?
Do we want to have a Yankee swap on the 22nd as we come up to Christmas?
No.
By Zoom.
Yeah, Yankee swap by Zoom. Could be interesting.
Right.
John?
I think our meeting with the selectmen should be on a Saturday morning, have lunch, and then continue into the afternoon with the amount of topics we have to consider.
Wow.
See,
Let's make them pay for the lunch.
John, the Saturday mornings, I think we had 2 of them, and you were on the board, I think, when we did. They were the most fruitful meetings because we were all wide awake and we didn't feel the constraint of, I am so tired after a long day of work. I thought they were the most fruitful meetings we had. So we
I
can,
did too.
okay, so we've got 2 on the board who remembered that. Bob, I think you were involved in those Saturday morning, and Jim was involved in those. And weren't they the most fruitful meetings we had?
Mm-hmm.
Not that I want to give up a Saturday, you understand, but I want to have this be a really good meeting.
Yeah, and the selectmen could deliver DoorDash meals to us at lunchtime, and we could reconvene at 1 o'clock and go as late as we want.
Yeah, their budget's bigger than ours, right?
No time limit.
So I think, Tom, if you want to propose that to Julian so he can propose it to the select board. I think that, I don't know when they're going to be deciding on a meeting date. I know they're going to be discussing topic and perhaps meeting date on Monday.
I think so. I will send that out to Julian here in a couple minutes when we wrap up. And for the record, I have went to a Saturday morning joint meeting before I worked here and got a lot out of it.
Okay. Yeah. So you concur with that too, don't you?
Yeah, it's likely, obviously we're going to be Zooming. So I won't get a chance to drive over the bridge Saturday morning, but I'll be happy to be, attending the meeting on
Yeah,
Saturday.
and that, of course, I'm not sure how you have a Zoom luncheon, but
John's idea about the DoorDash delivering
Yeah.
food.
to each one of us, if we can munch while we're meeting if we want to. Charlotte?
May I read you what Doug Brown has said to us in conclusion?
Sure.
Doug says, "My apologies for having not personally attended your meetings for a while. I'm reaffirming my commitment to do a better job of relating planning board status to the select board. Sounds good."
Great. Thank you,
Yeah.
Doug. Okay. And that is what we're talking about with communication, isn't it?
Mhm.
Too. Okay. General correspondence. I didn't receive any. Was there any general correspondence that we need to be made aware of, Tom? Nope. Okay, future agenda items. I think we pretty well laid them out tonight, haven't we? Are there any others that people want to have considered? Okay. So our next meeting is December 22nd, same time, same Zoom place.
And it's a busy meeting, so get your rest.
Is it really that bad, Tom?
We're, it's the end of the year. Everybody wants something for the end of the year. There's several things we're being introduced to, and one which may not have any legs. So we'll see. But we got projects that people are trying to get done, and we try to get them up as soon as we can and spread them out as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's 7:29. The meeting is adjourned.
Good night,
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Have a good night,
Night.
all.
Boy, an
Night.
hour. That was cool.